The recent circulation of a drug-related case linked to the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has been a major talking point on social media. Minister of State Labor and Employment and Director of Public Affairs and spokespersons, Tinubu Shetima Presidential Campaign Council, Festus Keyamo, SAN, clarified that Tinubu was not a defendant in the drug trafficking case in the United States, and also said he will not respond to the invitation for a debate by investigative journalist David Hundeyin, as is unknown to him. Hundeyin, who had earlier written an article on Bola Tinubu in a post on his official Twitter handle, had asked Keyamo to appear in a debate on any television station of his choice to discuss the story about Tinubu's case. Joining us on this show this morning, as we discuss his open challenge to Festus Keyamo, amongst other issues, is David Hundeyin. Welcome to the morning show, David. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, David, let's go straight into the matter. You had invited Festus Keyamo to come and have a debate with you on this issue of the eligibility of the presidential candidate of the APC within the purview of Section 137 of the 1999 Constitution. And he says you are unknown to him. Okay? What really are the facts of this matter, and what is your interest in it?
Well, the facts of the matter are clearly contained in the documents, which I'm sure most Nigerians who follow the news cycle would have seen by now. And for any who haven't read those documents, what I would recommend is that you don't have to take my word or anybody else's word for it. Go read those documents. It might be a bit bulky, but sit down for 30 minutes and you get through it. What the facts established in those documents are unimpeachable, and it's written in very clear language in black and white that Bola Ahmed Tinubu was involved in heroin trafficking. For a fact, it's stated clearly in the documents that the investigating agents in the US who came from the IRS and the FBI stated that they had probable cause to believe that over $1.4 million of funds found in his accounts were the proceeds of heroin trafficking. The drug traffickers who were responsible for generating these funds were also named. And if you read those documents, he acknowledged his relationship to those drug traffickers who went by the name of Abiodun Agbele and Muiz Adegboyega Akonde. In addition to having a close relationship with those people and being on the board of a company called Compass Finance and Investment Company with both of them. In fact, his wife also had a joint bank account with Muiz Akonde's wife. And the address he opened one of the accounts in question was the same address that Muiz Akonde, who was the drug kingpin, used as his drop-off point for heroin in Chicago. And perhaps most significantly of all, by his own admission in these documents, at the time all of this was going on, he was a treasurer at Mobile with a fixed monthly income of $2,400. And by his own admission, he had no other source of income. So somebody with $2,400 of monthly income, which comes to about $28,800 annually, had about $1.4 million in the bank, which on its own is bad enough. Now, it's also clearly outlined in those documents exactly where those funds came from, because he himself admitted to the IRS investigating agent, Kevin Moss, that on several occasions he had paid money belonging to Abiodun Agbele and Muiz Akonde into his accounts before he then did an about face and claimed that he didn't know them. All these things are in the documents. What isn't included in the document, but which I was able to dig up on my own, was that just less than 10 days after having a conversation with Special Agent Moss in 1992, when this case was being investigated, he started spending significant sums of money to purchase real estate in the US. Bear in mind that at this time, his accounts were getting frozen, right, left, and center. And he chose that time to start purchasing real estate, which obviously raises the question that, was he trying to hide money from the investigators by parking it in real estate. So again, for anyone who hasn't read the documents, it's difficult to sort of summarize 51 pages in a few minutes. So I'd sort of recommend that everyone should really take time out to read these documents. I consider that to be a sort of like basic requirement for citizenship at this point, for being a good citizen, that somebody who wants to be your president, who has this sort of antecedents, and it's in the public domain, it's publicly available now, people should read this thing and not just sort of go off of what some people have said about it. You don't have to take my word for it or Festus Keyamo's word or anybody's word, right? These things are written in English. So people should just honestly read this document and then reach their own conclusions about the type of personality who is aiming to become president next year.
Okay, so David, let's put some arguments from their camp forward, and I want you to, dissect it. Yesterday, FFK, Femi Fani-Kayode, was speaking, and he said the deductions was because of, taxation issue, and that they even returned $1 million to Tinubu. Can you put your clarity on that for us?
Okay, so first of all, Femi Fani-Kayode, or preferably Bola Tinubu himself, would have to explain how an accountant on a fixed annual income of $28,800 came to have over $1.4 million in his account, because the math simply don't add up, right? The story he has told in public before is that, he used to be a consultant working at Deloitte, and that he was working on an engagement at Saudi Aramco, and they paid him this fantastic bonus of $850,000 which is obviously a lie, because you do not get paid that kind of money in consultancy work. Anyone who has worked in consultancy work would know that. I have worked in consultancy work. You don't make that kind of money, even if you are a partner, even an equity partner doesn't make that kind of money. But then, just to confirm this, we took the extraordinary step of hiring a private investigator in Chicago who retained a law firm that actually subpoenaed Deloitte LLP. That, okay, please provide records of this person. We want to see proof of this guy's employment and his staff payment details to corroborate the story. And as you saw yesterday, I put out the response that we got. Deloitte basically said, we do not know this guy. That has never worked for us before. So Femi Fani-Kayode needs to explain exactly how it is that if somebody is owing $460,000 in tax, apparently, on an income of $28,800 per annum, the maths are not adding up. Secondly, it's also stated very clearly in the documents what the seizure was for. It stated clearly that this is with relation to seizure of the proceeds of narcotics trafficking. It's written in black and white. So I don't really understand why people come to national TV to just sort of tell these really pernicious lies, because it doesn't really take 5 minutes to see. It's on the first page of the document, actually. So maybe Femi Fani-Kayode hasn't read the documents, or maybe he's banking on everyone not reading the documents, and that's why he thinks he can get away with telling those kinds of lies on national TV. That's best known to him.
Okay.
And then, right.
Yeah, David, I asked you, what is your interest in this matter? That part of the question you haven't dealt with. And I asked that question advisedly. Bola Ahmed Tinubu is running for the presidential office of Nigeria on the platform of the All Progressives Congress. Now, all of this in the public domain, your essay, your report, your investigative report in the West Africa Weekly, which was where I read it, okay, we seem to suggest that under Section 137, this is not a fit and proper person to be president of Nigeria. The PDP, the People's Democratic Party, tried to take advantage of this over the weekend. And they said, no, this person, $460,000 forfeiture and all that. Okay, lawyers have raised the issue about criminal forfeiture, civil forfeiture, but the issue is that it's a hybrid, pointing in just one direction. But what is your interest, considering the fact that all of these issues that you have reported transpired in another jurisdiction may not have any effect whatsoever here in Nigeria, because it's not something emanating from our courts? Are you aware of anybody within the Nigerian jurisdiction taking this up as an issue?
So with regard to the drug trafficking in itself, you're right about that in that it didn't take place in a Nigerian jurisdiction. So as a legal issue, strictly speaking, in Nigeria, it's non-existent because it took place in the US. So on the basis of that, it's going to be very difficult to make this a legal issue. However, there are ancillary issues which I know for a fact are being taken up now. Probably either later today or before the end of the week, this is going to emerge. So I guess I have the privilege of breaking this on national TV. I happen to know for a fact that a lawyer who is based in the FCT is actually taking up some of these issues independently. He has filed a criminal complaint, which should have been actually served on Bola Tinubu yesterday. If it wasn't served yesterday, it should be served today. And these issues are with regard to the fact that he has essentially committed perjury on his INEC EC9 declaration. So some of the documents submitted were falsified. Some of the claims he made, such as having claimed to have been employed at Deloitte LLP, are manifestly false. We've gone to the extraordinary extent of obtaining subpoenas for his purported former workplaces, his former schools, Richard J. Daley College, Chicago State University, and there are all sorts of discrepancies, right? And this person has submitted falsified documents to INEC, and those are on his INEC 9 declaration. So this issue is actually being taken up by this lawyer. Actually, I'm going to name the lawyer. His name is Mike Enahoreba. So this action should have been served yesterday, but if it wasn't served yesterday, it's going to be served today. So I know for a fact that this is being taken up. Now, I don't know whether any political parties in Nigeria are actually taking this up, or whether, as you said, some of them are just trying to sort of jump on the bandwagon and take advantage of it. But I know that independent people who are lawyers and who are active in the civil society space are actually taking this up. And on a personal level, my own interest in this issue is that, first of all, as a journalist, I think I would not be doing my job if I'm aware that this, which could possibly be the biggest scandal in Nigeria's history, that someone who used to be part of a drug ring is in the running to become Nigeria's president. And that were to happen, and I was to know of it, and I wasn't to do my job, because this isn't a case of, somebody was involved in, contract fraud, they stole money, embezzlement. That's the usual thing we see in Nigeria. It's almost not a surprise. This is a whole new level, and especially being that so many of us now live in a diaspora, and on a day-to-day basis, we have to deal with the reality of being guilty by association. Once the word Nigeria is mentioned, it's difficult to describe the amount of damage it will do to us. If such a person were to become president, and then the world were to start to view us through those eyes, that, okay, these people come from a proper narco state, in a way that not even Colombia during the days of Pablo Escobar managed, that would be disastrous on the level that, we're already like global pariahs. There's a visa ban for Nigerians in the UAE, and the UAE takes in everybody, right? But there's a visa ban specifically for Nigerians. Wherever we go in the world, we get profiled, you get pulled aside at the airports. Once they see your green passport, you're already guilty. So this will just make it so many orders of magnitudes worse. And I think it would be a severe dereliction of duty if there was something that I or any journalist with the means could do about it, and they didn't do anything.
Okay. David, just a quick one. The UAE slammed visa ban on citizens of Nigeria, Ghana, and 17 other African countries. So, it was across board in Africa.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the other things I'd like to ask is, because you said you wanted an open context and debate, but since we can't put two of you together in the room, these are some of the points he made on the interview he had on television. He said the things that were written, the depositions were just mere presumptions. I want you to talk through that for me.
So again, I feel as if the reason people are able to say these things is because they expect that Nigerians will not have the sort of discipline to sit down and actually read these documents. First of all, let me just state that the conviction rate for federal cases in the US is something like 95%. It's between 95 and 97%. So the US is not a place where the federal authorities build a case against you on presumption. That's not how it works, right? In fact, the only reason that the conviction rate isn't even higher than that is because a lot of people choose not to even go to trial. They choose settlement or they choose plea bargains or whatever. If the U.S. authorities present an indictment against you, it's as good as you being guilty. So let's be clear about that first of all. Then secondly, if you actually read the documents, it wasn't as if somebody was making educated guesses that I believe that this money came from this place. No, everything was outlined in very granular detail. Details of wire transfers, and then by Tinubu's own admission, which he gave to Special Agent Moss, the testimony he gave to Special Agent Moss, he admitted by himself that some of these funds came from these people whose only source of income was heroin trafficking. So I feel as if the reason people like Festus Keyamo have been able to sort of get away with telling those kinds of lies in the public domain is that most Nigerians simply haven't read this document. And I cannot stress this enough, that reading is like gaining your freedom, right? You don't have to be a lawyer to be able to just read something in English and understand what it means. People like Keyamo expect you to not do that. They expect you to lack the mental discipline and rigor required to do that. But I promise it's not that difficult. These things are written in black and white, right? So this idea that, first of all, okay, it was tax. It wasn't a drug forfeiture. And then, it was presumption. That's complete nonsense. That's not what these case files state at all. And people would know that if they actually read the case files. So you don't have to take my word for it. Again, please find these case files and read them.
Okay, David, your piece is titled Bola Ahmed Tinubu from drug lord to presidential candidate, right? Even
Yes.
from the title, the direction of the piece is well known. And you started it by saying the 1990s were crazy. And you ended by saying the 1990s were crazy, but the 2020s are even crazier, okay?
Yes.
Am I correct? Right?
Yes.
Evidence that I've read the piece. But, with those statements, all of this, to what effect? Because even with the way you started the piece, the way you ended it, it's obvious that you don't even believe that this will have any effect. INEC has said we are not investigating the man. The EFCC is not interested in the matter. And it's an old story. It came up when he became governor in Lagos State, when he got his second term. So there are people who say, well, this is familiar story. If you go into politics, be prepared to hear the story of how your father impregnated your mother. Is this what we're dealing with here? Are you also skeptical that this is of no effect?
So the point of doing this story wasn't really to get some sort of response from INEC or the authorities, because we know there's a good chance it's not going to happen. The point of this was to speak directly to the Nigerian electorate, to those who are going to vote next year. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to vote because I'm not going to be in Nigeria and diasporans can't vote. But for those who are going to be able to vote, that they should be suitably informed about this character who wants to be their president, because coming from the situation we are coming from in 2015, the accepted narrative now is that people didn't know. I still beg to disagree, but the accepted narrative now is that people didn't know. People didn't have information. People didn't know the kinds of people they were dealing with at the time. So, but now I think, at this time in the information age that we live in now, at a time when statistically most Nigerians have a smartphone, most Nigerians have high-speed, cheap internet access, I think there is no excuse now for people not being armed with the information that they need to make better choices, right? I obviously have a political preference, which I have not been shy to express. But the point of this isn't even to campaign for a particular candidate, but it's to say that, look, whatever choice you are going to make is okay. But this one thing, there has to be a red line somewhere. There has to be a line that you can't cross, that, okay, I can deal with certain levels of baggage, but this person or this level of baggage is too much for me. this is far too much of it. Like, this person is not fit to be my president. This is not mere controversy. This is not mere political gimmickry and gamesmanship. This is an actual existential threat to me as a citizen. So that was the purpose of doing this story, to speak directly to Nigerian voters that, look, now you have this information put in front of you. It's up to you to decide what to do with it. And that, incidentally, was also why I chose to make the decision to do this story in visual format as well. Even though that, it's very expensive and it's very time consuming. And obviously I found my own work myself, so it's not an easy thing to do. But I just feel like, look, let it be on record that this information was out there. So whatever choices that Nigerians make in February next year, there will be no excuse like there was in 2015.
Okay, so I mean, you talked about the fact that you have political affiliation. Some people will probably ask, is it because of your political affiliation? What's the case? That's number one. Secondly, the name of the former IGP Tafa Balogun was mentioned in all of this trail, and I want you to explain that angle, for us. The fact that, okay, this was pushed in the early 2000s, Tafa Balogun responded, something happened. Explain all of that angle to us.
Okay, so first of all, the political preference. So the candidate whose name I'm not going to mention here because this isn't about him. I've spoken to him once, literally one time. And that was it. And he was literally him getting in touch with me to say, oh, thanks for the support. And that was it. I don't I wish that there was more of a relationship there, but there just isn't. And obviously for ethical purposes, there really can't be, because obviously based on the experiences we had from 2015, we've seen what happens when you sort of cross the line from being a journalist and to being an out and out political activist, and how that can destroy your career and make you lose credibility. I'm not trying to do that to myself. So I've also been careful to sort of maintain that firewall. So this isn't really about trying to project any particular candidate, even though I do have my preference, which obviously you well know. Now, the second point that you mentioned, which was the purported document originating from the US consulate, which was addressed to Tafa Balogun in 2003. I think this is probably one of the more important points in this conversation, because it illustrates the extent to which people are clever by half. Now, what was requested, the information that was requested from the US consulate at the time was that, has Bola Ahmed Tinubu been convicted of criminal activity in the US? Is there a record of a criminal conviction for Bola Ahmed Tinubu in the US? So obviously the response that came back was, no, there's no record of a criminal conviction for Bola Ahmed Tinubu in the US. So think of it as, I bought a car from a car dealer, right? Now, let's say the car I bought was a Honda Accord. Now, you go send a letter to the car dealer to ask the car dealer, did David Hundeyin buy a Mercedes-Benz from you? And then the car dealer responds, David Hundeyin didn't buy a Mercedes-Benz from me. And then you now take that to town and say, this is evidence that David Hundeyin didn't buy a car from that car dealer. That's what this is. Because the question is not, is there a criminal conviction? The question is, was there criminal activity that was linked credibly to Bola Ahmed Tinubu in the US? Is there some sort of indictment? And yes, there is. Whether you call it a civil indictment, whether you call it a criminal indictment, there was some sort of criminal activity that was linked to this character in the US.
Okay, let me further that, oh, sorry, Dr. Bati.
No, go ahead.
Okay, let me further that by quickly asking. So the US Embassy coming to say that the records were clean, didn't they check their records on ground to see probably all of this that you have pointed out and that was also in circulation? Was that the case?
Yes, but they will obviously have seen it. But as I said, the specific information that was asked of them was, is there a criminal conviction? So they're not going to say, no, there's no criminal conviction, but there is this. No, they're just going to give you exactly what you asked for. Now, if you had widened the scope of your query, you'd have gotten the information that you've asked for. So the people who sent that query to them knew exactly what they were doing.
Okay, David, quickly, before we wrap this up. One, I think it's important that we're not asking you to vote on international television, since, you are in the diaspora. But it's important for you to explain to us who that your preferred candidate is. Because, in all of this, context is important. And we're in the season of propaganda, and propaganda can be selective. If you really have a candidate, I think you should be courageous enough to say, this is my candidate. This is the person that I support. Otherwise, after this interview, you will see all kinds of things being promoted by social media bandits. That's number one. Number two, you are known. You have a reputation as an investigative journalist. So you have done this with regard to Bola Ahmed Tinubu. You say the people have the right to know. Okay, people in the information space will understand that. People really have the right to know. But are you going to do the same investigation with other presidential candidates? Because people will say, oh, some of these other presidential candidates too have their own excessive baggage. Are you also pursuing the people's right to know? Investigate, say, for instance, Atiku Abubakar. Investigate, say, for instance, Kwankwaso. Investigate, say, for instance, Peter Obi. As briefly as possible.
So first of all, my choice of candidate, which I have never made any sort of secret of, is Peter Obi of the Labour Party. So that's for starters. And I owe no apologies for that. The second question, which you referenced, that am I planning to do similar work on other candidates? Well, the thing is, other candidates don't have, some other candidates do have some level of scandal surrounding them, but no other candidate has anything approaching this level of scandal, right? So, and I think I referenced this earlier in the conversation when I said that it's not the usual thing of, this one did a contract scam, this one sold assets at undervalued prices to his cronies, this one embezzled state funds. Those are corruption issues, and they are serious, and they should be taken seriously. But this is a whole new level, which is why I thought that this deserved priority. So am I going to do similar work on other candidates? Well, yes and no. Yes, to the extent that they do have, whatever it is that they have that the public needs to know, but also no in the sense that if they don't have a history of drug trafficking, international drug trafficking, then there's no way I can do a story about their involvement in international drug trafficking. I can't make it up. So if people are expecting there to be equivalency, unfortunately, there might not be. And that's not my fault. That's Bola Tinubu's fault.
Okay, on that note, thank you very much, David Hundeyin, for joining us today on The Morning Show.